Okay, so I was originally just gonna make this into like a Reddit post or whatever, but I have too many feelings about this, and I needed to shout and scream and just get it out into the void, or I'm gonna go like crazy. Um, so I'm doing. It has been almost 2 years since the release of Veilguard, and I'm still not quite over the fact that Dragon Age as a series is. I mean, I think everybody in the fan base and the community, we're all very well aware. This is the end. Unfortunately, um, it as far as we know and are aware, unless the upcoming Mass Effect game does well, BioWare is probably gonna go under, which means no more Dragon Age. Unless like a Larian Studios move happens where like 15 years from now some independent game studio decides to buy the IP, which I hope to God happens, please. But um I'm still not over this because again, I'm a super fan. I am a super Dragon Age fan. Skip like if you want to get to the actual tier list part, skip like 3 minutes ahead. And for your own sanity, skip to 3 minutes ahead. But I'm I was out in the trenches of the Dragon Age fandom after Inquisition came out, like waiting, hoping, looking up every piece of news and media for when Veilguard came out. I'm like this series is foundational to like who I am as a person. Is that cringy and a bit sad? Probably. But like I fucking love Dragon Age. And now that it's been almost 2 years since the release of the last game, I've just been feeling very nostalgic, and I want to, and as a way to work through my emotions and feelings I have towards this series, I figured I would just go through all the games, specifically the companions, because what in my opinion as an educated Dragon Age fan, mind you, as an as an S tier Dragon Age master gatekeeping fandom person, to me, what makes Dragon Age more so than the character driven stories is the companions themselves. The companions are why you play Dragon Age games. In my opinion, in my correct formal opinion, the companions are why you play Dragon Age. That is irrefutable. Um, so yeah, I figured I would just go and review all the companions of across the series and see which ones do I think were. And this is one, I'm gonna be fully cognizant and aware and conscious of the fact that I do have a bias. I'm fully aware. I will try to be as objective as possible, but I am going to be aware that I do have a bias towards certain characters or others. Um, but that being said, with this tier list, I will be trying to look at them as objectively as possible in terms of their character progression across their game, and because we're doing all companions across the entire series, their character progression across the entire series for the companions that do end up showing up in multiple games. Which ones are the weak, which ones stand out, which ones are the better written, which ones I think needed more work. But even though I have a just a giant knot of angry feelings towards Veilguard, the point of doing this is in a way to remember what Dragon Age gave us. So I'm keeping it there's not going to be any unnecessary Veilguard hate. I'm keeping it positive and just going to instead of bemoaning what has been lost and what um I think led to the loss, I'm just gonna try to be focusing on the positive. There's a lot going on in the world right now. I'm trying to keep it positive, and I'm going to try and focus on the positive things that this series has given me. So all that fluff, if any of that made sense to anybody watching currently, I don't think anybody's gonna actually watch this video, because who the hell is watching Dragon Age content in 2026? Yeah, if any of that made sense to anybody, you're in the right, you're with it. You're in the right group of people, which is just me. And all that being said, let's get into it. So, um first and foremost, Alistair. Oh, God. He's my bro, he's my bruh, he's my dude, he's my mister from another sister, or dumbass expression. God, I'm stupid as fuck. Um, Damn, Alistair, I love you. I think so. With Dragon Age Origins, I think it always stood as obvious to me anyway that like the traditional or the default or the canon, not that there's any actual given canon in the series, because part of the series is you make your own blah 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 blah. But in my mind, what I think we can all widely agree is the default party for Dragon Age Origins is Alistair, Leliana, and Morrigan, obviously. Alistair and Morrigan more than Leliana, because you literally get them at the start of the game. Alistair's your first companion, and you meet Morrigan like within, I think, the first 3 hours. So with Alistair, I think what I love the most about Alistair is that he is a subversion of the Lost Prince trope, in that he is the bastard son of a king. He's the lone heir left in the kingdom as all this horrible shit is going on. And he earnestly has no interest in the throne. He has no interest in doing that. He's a subversion in that there's not this like he's not Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. He's kind of a wimp. Honestly, I think Alistair is kind of a bitch, quite frankly. He's like, after my third or fourth playthrough, I was like, Alistair, bruh, I love you, but like, you kind of a whiny bitch though. Like, with all love and affection, always kind of a whiny bitch. I gotta go with my boy Logain in the Landsmeet. It just works. It just works. But yeah, I think after Morgan, I think Alistair is probably the best written companion of the Origins companions, if not just also one of the best written characters across the series. You do actually, oh wait, yeah, if you turn him into king, you can see him in 2. But it's really just it's like a jokey cameo, nothing more, so I'm not really gonna judge that based off of anything. And then I liked that in Inquisition, you can, depending on your choices, you can see him. You can either see him when you save the mages at Red Cliff. He comes in towards the end with either by himself or with Honora. Again, and it's more just like a cameo to just be like, hey, we didn't forget your choice. So, yay for that. Or if you kept him as a Grey Warden, then he can become the person you sacrifice in the Fate, I believe. It has been I did a complete playthrough of all 4 games a few months ago, so the information is there. It's just trying to decipher. But yeah, Alistair, he's my boy, he's my bruh. That's ride or die. I think he's one of the better written companions, if not one of the best written companions across the series all far. I think he has really good character progression across the series. I like that he's a subversion of a trope, which makes him much more interesting. Honestly though, I just never, I don't know, I'm gonna do, cut short sweet, B-A. I'm gonna do an A tier. Alistair. I also go, controversial opinion, I don't care to romance him. Like, his romance is very mushy and sweet and everything, and I get how a lot of people could be into it, but for me, I'm just like, it's just vanilla. Like, Alistair, I love you, but you're vanilla. Also, he's a virgin. Like, bruh. I can't be your first. I don't want to be your first. I have no interest in being anybody's first. Alistair, I love you. You're my boy. You're my bruh. You are invited to hang whenever, but like, I just firm A tier, and I'm just gonna leave it at that before I rant too long. Oh, and the dog. That's easy. That's just gonna be B tier. He's because the dog is just mostly just a joke companion, really. Or not a joke companion, but like they're just there to be cute and fun. Also, in terms of gameplay, it having the dog as a companion felt more restrictive, just because the dog didn't deal that much damage, and they weren't that tanky, and there wasn't as many things you can outfit with them, because the only things you were able to change on them was just their collar and their war paint. So it's like, I liked having it, but as a PC player, PC Master Race, I play with what is it? The mod that lets you have the dog as a summonable pet rather than a full companion. I feel like that's what they should have done in the game. It just makes more sense. But yeah, the dog, he's fun, he's cute, he's there. He's not good or bad, he's just there. So, yeah. Leliana, S tier. S tier. I'm not arguing, I'm not fighting, I'm not doing nothing. Leliana, yeah. Does she need to go down to A tier though? S tier or A tier? S tier or A tier? Because Leliana, I love the story of someone who this hits me in my wheelhouse. This hits me where it hurts. This is my home. Like, Leliana, girl, we're trauma bonding over here. But I love characters who are deeply devoted to someone to an excessive amount of loyalty, and then once that loyalty is broken, it forces them to recontextualize their entire life and realize that, like, they're more than just, like, what they can provide to other people around them. They're more than what they can be for they are their own person. And I feel like Leliana in Origins is a story of self-actualization that I personally really vibed with and liked. I also like that she is a religious character, but is all the great parts of someone who is religious, in that she believes in the divine power of love. She believes in bringing that, like, all people should be loved unconditionally and wholly, regardless, and that no one person is without a chance of redemption. Obviously, probably exceptions withstanding, of course. But I love Leliana. Leliana she's my bestie. She's my girl. We're going to the store together. We're gonna talk about shoes. We're gonna make fun of people together. Like, Leliana, girl, you is bestie. You is bestie material. I have not romanced her though. Obvious reasons. I love Leliana. She's the ride or die girl. She is the best. You know, I'm bringing it up to S tier because I don't know, because I think in Origins her story of self-actualization is really good, and then in Inquisition it's kind of just a repeat of the same. But I think, which, I mean, there's two arguments for that. You can either say it was that it's faulty or bad writing because it's just a repeat of already traveled material, or you can say it's actually better or decent writing because it shows that people are creatures of habits. We do have a tendency to repeat negative or bad behaviors, even if they are self-destructive or not actually helping to the self at all. And I like that in my playthroughs, what I did, so it makes a bit more canon sense, is I have my Warden harden Leliana, so then it tracks better into Inquisition, where she's basically a ruthless murder priest. And then I have my Inquisitor soften her and let her become divine. Which, by the way, Liliana is the. I'm not. There are no arguments. No argument. Liliana is the best divine. I won't leave your letters and your mail somewhere else. Liliana is the best divine. No contest. I'm still. I'm not. No, no, not bringing Veilguard hate into this. Not bringing Veilguard hate into this. This is positive. We're keeping it positive. We're keeping it light. We're keeping it nice. But yeah, I think having her yet again in Inquisition, having a repeat of her story arc, which is a story arc of self-actualization and realizing that you're more than what you are to other people. I think specifically also having her become the new divine is the perfect character growth, because she goes from pawn to leader through a series of self-actualization, realizing that she doesn't just have to follow people, she can lead her own path and also lead others. And I love it so much. Liliana is bestie. Liliana is ride or die. God. Oh, Liliana. I like you. I do wish in Inquisition, though, they wrote it just a tiny bit better, because it feels weird trying to tell your spy master assassin, hey, don't kill as many people, though. It felt like a bit like, are we Steven Universe now? Like, what Disney plotline? It felt a bit weird having to tell the spy master, hey, maybe don't kill. I don't know, but I love Liliana. I think she's S tier. I think she's one of the again, she is what I would consider the default traditional canon companions for the Origins party. Do her singing scenes and Origins make me cringe? Yes, they do. They make me cringe a lot. I have to skip. I've never been able to sit through the whole scene. I either skip through it or go to the bathroom. I have an issue with life before. That's my trauma and my issues, but I can't deal. But Liliana, she's bestie and she's ride or die and she's girl. Liliana is my best friend. She my best friend. She a real bad bitch to her own car. God. I think a moment that has always stood out to me in terms of Liliana, again, do I really think she's worthy of S tier? Because I don't want to put too many companions in S tier. Yeah, I'm gonna leave her. I'm gonna leave my girl in S tier. My girl deserves S tier. Loghain, S tier. Loghain, my man. So, Alistair is my boy. Loghain is my man. Loghain is, again, I feel like we're only 4 companions in, and I've used this to describe 3 of them. But like, Loghain, I think, is one of the best written, not just companions in the series, but characters in general in the series. I think he's one of the best written villains in modern gaming history. He's so complex, and when you do get him as a companion, he doesn't just automatically turn 180 and be like, yeah, I was wrong. He's like, you know what? We have differences, but they're the blight. There's the blight going on. We have our differences, but we'll set that aside for the greater side. And it's interesting being able to actually get to know him as a person, because he's actually remarkably open. He's like, because he's in a spot if you do choose to turn him into a Grey Warden after the lands meet and he becomes a companion, he's in this spot in his life where he's like, I don't have anything left to lose, so I might as well just open up about everything. And it's so, the game up until that point, I think, did a really good job at writing him as a man who may have been motivated by greed, may have been motivated by self-interest, may have been motivated by possibly something noble, and again, they do this really good job at building him as almost a larger than life character. Like, he is this folk hero, he's the general, and as the story goes on up to the point of the Landsmeet, you can see him almost becoming increasingly more tyrannical and increasingly more, like, losing grip of reality. Like, take your meds, buddy. You loosen touch just a little bit. And then when you finally do get him as a companion, it's this refreshing of this immediate, like, oh my god, you're still just a person. Like, underneath everything else, you are just a person. And I found that just, like, whoa. Like, Logain is just so... God, he's just really well written. And I can bemuse over this point. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly. And there aren't enough words to articulate just the quality of character writing that is Logain, other than I firmly believe he's S tier. And so I have always loved his line that when you talk to him about Anora, because I believe you can ask him, like, were you really gonna kill your daughter? like, bro, straight up, were you gonna kill her? Because, like, low key, I get it, but and he has this line about it doesn't matter how old she gets. I'm always gonna see her as that little girl with bruised knees and braids in her hair. I forget the exact line, but it was just so, like, getting him as the game makes him this larger than life character, and then you get him as a companion and you realize at the end of the day he is still just one man. He is just one person who is acting out on trauma that he's received from his harsh upbringing, and it's hard not to at least feel some amount of sympathy for him, even when, as I almost exclusively play elves. I know it's cringe, it's boring, especially because I think the elves got way too much attention in no, keeping it positive. Even as someone who almost exclusively plays elf characters, in knowing Logain basically sold some of my people into slavery, even I was like, I have just a mild amount of sympathy for the man, just a little bit. But yeah, and I like that there ultimately was payoff in letting him live, in that you can, in Inquisition, if you turned him into a warden in Origins, in Inquisition, you can sacrifice him in the Fade, and I think that is the best outcome for his character, in that I don't think him just joining and serving in the Wardens by itself was enough to redeem him for all the things that he did in the events of Origins. And this lone man going beyond his trauma, going beyond his hatred, to ultimately end up helping save Orlais and the Orlesian Grey Wardens, and sacrificing this singular, ultimately very down-to-earth character who has very little knowledge of any magic or anything, is the one who sacrifices himself in the Fade, I think was ultimately the best way to write off his character. I think you can either kill him in Origins, or you can see the potential. And I like that in Inquisitions I felt that he was very friendly to the Inquisitor in a way that was, like, unexpected. Like, you can tell that he has been softened by hardship and then also by age. Logain. Okay. Morgan, another S. Another S. Morgan is also bestie. I can't stay. I love Morgan. She was, I think, in, like, my first or second in both my first and second playthroughs in my first playthrough of Origins, I played as a male city elf. Because I feel like a male city elf is the only person, or no, I did a male city elf playthrough, and then I did a Dalish male elf playthrough, and in both of them, I romanced Morgan because I feel like, I don't know, that just worked in my head. I think I like, because even disregarding her appearance and her voice, it's a very easy. I believe in Origins, Morgan is literally like, she's only 19 or 20 years old. So she's this very young woman who has basically been cast off by her mother and has very little actual knowledge of the world. And what knowledge she does has been very much so shaped by her life as growing up as an apostate in the swamps. So needless to say, not great. A lot of trauma. But not fun childhood for Morgan, unfortunately. And so she's this character that you can... She tries to come off as, like, this... wiser than her years. She already knows everything she needs to know about everything. Like, she tries to come off as the smartest person in the room. And then when you actually get to know her, you can realize she is ultimately just not a scared person, but she is just a very defensive young woman who's trying to defend herself in a world that seems to be very hold a lot of animosity towards her, and that I could very much so sympathize and understand and gel with and vibe with, and all the other words that mean I get it. Morgan. And I like that, again, Dragon Age, I think, has an unfair... Well, no, not unfair. I think it's partially deserved. Partially deserved a representation, or not representation, but partially deserved reputation for having companions that betray you. And what I liked with Morgan is that Morgan's considered one of the betrayers because if you do the Dark Ritual, she ultimately will leave you the night. Regardless of what happens, she will leave you later in the game. But she's never actually lying. She tells you straight up, like, but I'm here to ride the dick, then leave. She said, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. She said, what that dick do or not? And she is cold and standoffish and a bit brutal, but she is honest in a way that doesn't necessarily come across as just like outright bitchiness, which is an issue I have with a lot of other, those fuckers who are like, I'm not a bitch, I'm just honest. If that makes me mean, so be it. It's just like, but no one asked for your fucking opinion, so shut the fuck up. I never once had that issue with Morgan. Although I will say at certain parts across Origins, like her being okay with like when you go into the alienage and then you have to free the elves from the Tevinter mages, it does. Oh, again, because in Origins she is a younger woman who's had a very harsh life, and so she's very shaped by like a need of self-preservation. But as someone who mostly played elves and then was also playing an elf while romancing her, when we got to the alienage, and she was like, man, just let them die. It's their own fault for getting caught. We could do the blood magic ritual and, like, you know, get stronger and whatever. And it's like, bitch, like, it felt a bit unnecessarily evil of a choice for her, when I think Morgan is... Again, Morgan isn't evil. She is just motivated in Origins largely by a need of self-preservation. But that was a choice where it didn't feel like it was self-preservation. It just felt like they wanted her to be... Because I think if you do like an evil playthrough or whatever, Morgan is the companion you could probably get the most approval with and everything like that. But again, it's watching... So in Origins, ultimately, she doesn't have a character arc or character growth, in my opinion. She just is a young woman who puts up a lot of walls to defend herself. And she's a very static character, in my opinion, in Origins. She's not really growing. The only growth there is whether or not she opens up to you, the player character, and becomes friends or perhaps lovers or perhaps more. And so, and again, but ultimately, I think she's a very static character, and she leaves at the end, and that's it. But then in Inquisition, seeing her all these years later, especially if you did the dark ritual with her and she has a kid, seeing her softened with age, and she has that moment a lot of us do when we look back on our high school years, where you can really tell that she sort of stepped back and was like, damn, that was cringy as fuck what I was doing back then. And it's rare, especially among female characters, because female characters in gaming typically just don't get to age. But especially among female characters, it was so nice to basically sort of inadvertently see her have this moment of reflection and self-growth, and looking back and realizing that in some way she was kind of like, yeah, I was a bit harsh unnecessarily. And her sort of rising above her prejudices and her letting down her walls and just letting her be who she is. But don't worry, she'll still snap at you. And then in Veilguard, Veilguard. I don't know. I feel like in Veilguard she was more a plot device than an actual character. She's just kind of there to be like the avatar for Mythal, and that, spoilers by the way, for a game that's almost 2 years old now. So, but it felt like she was more just an avatar for Mythal than an actual character in her own right. And I will forgive them for not letting us talk to Morrigan all that much, because ultimately Rook doesn't really need to know. Like, there are so many other bigger things going on. Rook getting to know all the like minor or private details of Morrigan's life is so low on the priority list that I'm willing to forgive them for basically having Morrigan withhold majority of the information from her past. Because also, like, just from her point of view, it's like, why would I just like come out the gate telling this person that, like, oh yeah, I like partied with the warden, the hero Ferelden, like 20 years ago and had his kid, BT dubs. It makes sense. I'll forgive them for that. But I don't know. Does the Veilguard version of Morrigan bring, because again, this is looking at the character across all games, across the entire series, as definite rating. And does Veilguard bring Morrigan down from S to A? You know what? I'm just going to keep her an S tier. I'm just going to keep her an S. Where's my monsters? Okay. Going on to Oghren. Oghren, that's D. That's D. You know, actually, I'll do C. You know, actually, for Oghren, I might just do B. I might just do B. So his humor, and not to sound too woo-woo or whatever, because I'm someone who watches Family Guy and South Park and all kinds of, like, offensive type shit or whatever. The issue with Oghren is that his comedy just really wasn't that funny to begin with, and it felt very lazy, quite frankly. Like, I'm okay with the kind of humor that Oghren has. It just, like, wasn't the writing for his humor felt kind of lazy. They're just like, yeah, just make him an old alcoholic creepy pervert, it's fine. So, like, the writing was already lazy for the type of humor that he has as a character, and then it has only progressively aged worse as the games have gone on. But in my last playthrough of Origins, I actually, typically, because of his humor, Oghren was a companion that I had a tendency to overlook, and it's like, once I got him into my party, never talked to him. Never. Most of the time ignored him, quite frankly. But in my most recent playthrough of Origins, because my most recent playthrough of all 4 games is what I'm considering my final playthrough of the series, I don't have the energy. I love this series. I love everything that it has given me. Again, it's cringy to say and a bit nerdy and pathetic, some might say, but Dragon Age is foundational to who I am as a person. It has inspired me in so many ways. And so in what but I don't have the energy anymore to go through all 4 games, especially knowing that unfortunately there isn't going to be the harsh fact is that unfortunately there aren't going to be any more games, and it sucks to say that, but that's just like, unless the new Mass Effect that's going to come out somehow does like goes gangbusters, does Skyrim GTA 5 levels of success, I just do not see a future in where there's more Dragon Age games, unfortunately. And I just don't have the energy to go through all 4 games with knowing that like there's never going to be any more, unfortunately. But anyway, going back to, I mean, keeping it positive, with so because the most recent playthrough was what I'm considering my final playthrough of the series, I decided to give Oghren some more time and actually go through all of his dialogue, actually listen to what the man is saying. And I don't think the game writing itself does a good job of it. I think you as the player, in order to get the most out of Oghren's writing, I think you as the player really have to read in between the lines and do more work than the game wants you to do, or than the game is doing itself, I should say. But and I actually made a Reddit post about. I'm a Redditor, unfortunately. Don't at me. Oghren reminds me a lot of, as someone who lives in the South, if you haven't noticed from my accent, Oghren reminds me a lot of like older Southern men who ultimately end up building up like this huge amount of resentment towards their own culture for all of the restrictions and responsibilities it places upon them. Like Oghren talks about it himself, is that he doesn't have the time or patience for dwarven customs or cultures when it comes to like, oh, because you're in this caste you can't do XYZ, because you're in this caste you can't do XYZ, only certain castes are allowed to enter. And he very much so is like, I just want to be a person. That's all Oghren really wanted. He was suffocating under the restrictions and the imprisonment of dwarven cultural norms. And so getting him out of Orzammar is, I think, in a lot of ways actually very healing and freeing for the character. And when you do that extra work as the player and read between the lines and really look at the world building and how Oghren fits into the world building, I think Oghren is actually he was sad anyway. He's a depressed alcoholic whose wife left him. It's hard to get sadder than that. But Oghren is just a really sad character. He's a man who has been beaten down by the world, and his alcoholism and his jokes are just his way of dealing with his trauma of being so fucking miserable. And so he does remind me a lot of Southern men in the real world who just unfortunately can't express themselves or be the way that they want to be because Southern culture and shit. So yeah, in my most recent playthrough, I actually developed a lot more respect and understanding of Oghren's character. That being said, everything I just said, I'm going to drop him back down to C tier, because again, I feel like it's requiring the player to do more work than the game is actually doing for the character if you truly want to get the value and understanding of Oghren's character. So yeah, Oghren. Also, him in Awakening, just, I think, but because, again, Oghren, as far as I'm aware, doesn't really have a character. Or he is a bit more of a static character, in my opinion, in Origins, because you get him, you go through the Deep Roads, you kill his wife, or whatever choice you decide to make there, and then he goes onto the surface with you to help against the Blight, and then that's just kind of it. And while that is probably a very, what I just said, it's a freeing and perhaps even healing moment for his character to finally be out of Orzammar. It doesn't really, he doesn't have any noticeable growth within the game, in my opinion, post that point. And then once he is a companion in your party, again, he becomes I think of the Origins cast, he is the joke character, because half the time you interact with him, he's he's drunk and wasted and off his fucking ass. He is 3 sheets to the wind, one might say. So there just isn't that much. Like, you can find Felsi, and like, there's an implication that they get together after the game, and then in Awakenings, you find out that he actually did get with Felsi, and ends up getting her pregnant, and then decides to be a deadbeat dad and leave. Which, again, this tier list isn't about the likability of characters, it's about the quality of their writing. First and foremost, it's about the quality of their writing. My likability, I will admit, I do have certain biases. Like, with Liliana and Morgan, definitely a bias. They probably deserve A tier more than S tier, but that's me. But yeah, it just felt like they wanted... For some reason, they decided of everybody you get in Origins, Oghren is the companion that you should have in Awakening going forward, and then they just decide... It felt like they didn't know what to do, so they went back on, like, he's an alcoholic, just make him a deadbeat dad. And it just didn't... It was meh. So yeah, Oghren is a character that has not aged in any way, shape, or form. But if you do the work, there is a nugget of quality underneath everything else surrounding the character. Shale, let's be. Just firm B. I think she's... Quite frankly, I think if they were to... Well, no. But, like, I've heard the sentiment before, and I agree with it, that I feel like Shale should have been in base game, and Shale should have been the companion that you get in Orzammar over Oghren. Like, if you had to pick between the two of them, Shale should be the one that you get in that section of the game. And again, excuse me, monster energies make me a bit burpy. Anyway, with Shale, I like her and she's funny, but in a lot of ways, she feels like a joke character, while with her constantly talking about... And again, there is an actual storyline to her character. It was very sweet. It was very bittersweet in helping her find out her past and her history. And then if you are the one if she is in your party when you take her to the Anvil, it is nice sort of letting her take part in the destruction of this horrible thing that turned her into what she is. But again, over that though, Shale does initially come across as a bit of like a joke, just like a jokey fun character, with her being very like, I'm gonna kill all the wizards and kill all the birds. And again, I like her and everything, but she doesn't really have much character. There's not much of an arc or growth. It's just letting her find out about her past. And then towards the end, she's just like, I'm gonna go to Tevinter and try and find out if there's a way I can undo this. And then we never hear from or see her ever again. No mentions. I think there's like one joke mention in Dragon Age 2 or Inquisition about how the population of pigeons has decreased in the years following the Blight, which is like obviously an indirect reference towards her. But like, there's nothing, she's a DLC character that comes across as a joke character, and then we never hear from or see her again. I personally like her. I wish there was more content for her. I think as far as characters go, I think, especially for DLC characters, I think she fits well enough into the narrative of Origins, but there just isn't that much there, and there wasn't much of an arc or growth. I like her, but just a firm B. Firm B. Sten, that's another B. Sten is another B tier. Yeah, it's a very easy... Sten is interesting in a lot of ways. First and foremost, my own personal opinion is that Sten is sort of just there to be an early second warrior you can get in your party if for whatever reason you didn't want to have Alistair. That's my own personal opinion. He was initially just, they're like, we need another tank in case people don't want Alistair in their party, just to add some diversity. And then now we have Sten. And Sten is really interesting in that he is, of all the characters in Origins, he is the most of an outsider, being the only Qunari in the game and the only representative of the Qunari culture. And so it was interesting in Origins seeing that cultural distance and interaction, and talking with Sten is one of those instances in gaming where like I truly felt like this is a utterly alien culture, different from anything I know or would have expect. And it's compacted by the fact that Sten is a warrior, and so in his culture he was only trained to be a warrior. He's not out trying to convert people, so he doesn't have the adequate knowledge to explain what it is that his culture does. He can only give you sort of like broad paint strokes of a description. And then again, a lot of the characters in Origins feel a bit static, and I think Sten is an especially static character. He doesn't have a character arc, and he doesn't really move. You just get him his sword back, and then he's like, you specifically, player character, have honor, and so I will, even though I can now return to my people without having to be afraid of being murdered for not holding my weapon, I will stay with you out of honor and obligation to defeat the Blight. And it's just like, I mean, it's cool or whatever, but you really don't get to know that much about him. Because of his inability to properly explain his culture, you don't get to know that much about Qunari culture from him either. Which wasn't as much as an issue, because I'm someone who started with Inquisition, so I kind of already, like, knew more going blah, 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 blah. I think he's just a firm B tier character. I think, I don't know, maybe he should be an A, because I feel like with not every character, when everybody is hyper interesting and has like this deep story, narrative involved, like personal character arc and story, it can be when everybody tries to be interesting, nobody's interesting. Veilguard issue. And so I think you need flat static characters like Sten to make other characters look better. Not that flat or static characters necessarily look worse or have lower quality writing. It's just a requirement of the craft. And Sten is a very flat, static character who's just there. He does his job, he helps, and then he gets out. And God, do I wish we could have seen him in Veilguard. But oh well. Wynne, that's another B. Again, she's a flat, static character. I feel Wynne, especially in my opinion, is very guilty of what I just accused Sten of. In that they were like, well, we need another mage in the party in case, for whatever reason, player character doesn't want Morrigan in their party. And then they're, like, decided, and with Morrigan already being, spec'd from the start as a more control, damage-dealing centered mage, they're like, okay, so then we need, also because this is an RPG game, they're like, okay, we just need to create, like, insert a healing character, and that's gonna be it. And it feels like with Wynne, they were just like, okay, just make, like, a nice old lady. And she is a nice old lady. She does feel a bit, it does feel a bit like she's patronizing the player character a lot. This is a weird hill a lot of people die on. For people who don't like Wynne, they're specifically like, how dare she tell me who I can and can't be with? And it's like, when she says that stuff, it never felt like anything more than like an older relative just giving you their 2 cents on the matter. She wasn't like saying you can't be together with them. She was just giving like sagely advice. So I don't understand. For a lot of people, that's like their breaking point with Wynne and why they hate her. And I was always just like, oh, this is kind of thin-skinned for that to be the breaking point. But okay, I guess. I mean, I do like Wynne, but again, she's a very she's a very static, flat character. who you get her, you help save those mages in the Circle Tower. And then she just I always had her in my party because Origins combat is fucking annoying and frustrating to me, and I needed a healer. Except for like the 1 or 2 playthroughs where I was a mage, in which case I just spec'd myself out as the healer so I could have Morrigan in my party without it feeling redundant. But yeah, you get her, and then she's just all grateful. You get her from the Mage Tower, and she's all grateful and nice and everything. And then she sort of just kind of sits in, if you don't, she just kind of sits around and gives, like, well, it's very like, well, let me tell you, youngin', what my opinion on this stuff is happening as someone. Also, I believe Wynn is actually canonically only like in her 40s or 50s. She's not actually that old, but she's very much so like, well, let me tell you what we did back then 30 years head on. But yeah, it's just kind old lady who is the designated healer of the party. And her companion quest was very short. It was very short, and there just wasn't that much to it. It was just like, oh yeah, my one regret before I pass on is she has an apprentice that she wants to make rights with again. And it was nice getting to see him and them having this mutual moment of like, Wynn maybe wasn't the best teacher, but also it was just an environment that he was never going to succeed or excel in at. And she's afterwards, she's just kind of like, thank you, player character, for helping. Now I can die peacefully. And then, she shows up in Awakenings as, like, a very, like, you can talk to her, but you don't actually interact with her all that much. And then that's the last we ever hear from or see from her again. Because then she ends up, I don't know why, BioWare. This is the shit that as a loyal fan, as a once loyal fan, I should say, that you're stop putting interesting shit in books that, like, majority of the players aren't going to read. Because that's what happened to Wynn. She dies in a book, I believe it's Asunder. She just dies during, like, the Mage Rebellion. I believe she sacrificed her life for her son's girlfriend. I don't fully remember. It's been a while. But yeah, she just... And we all knew she was gonna die, because literally, like, I think one of the very first things she says to you in Origins is, like, by the way, I'm gonna die soon, just so you know. So it's hard to get attached to her, feel attached to a character who is fully like, I'm going to die and I'm okay with it. Like, maybe a little too quick to, like, are you good? You got the suicides? Girl got the suicides. She said, I ain't trying to live, fuck it. But yeah, I like Wynn. I think she's nice. Just nice old lady. Very, a flat static character. Zevran, that's A tier. Zevran is A tier. I'm not hearing arguments on that. So, okay, Zevran, like Oghren, is the character that, for the most part, I had a tendency to ignore. I think Zevran is also a very joke-heavy character, but I think that Zevran's, in comparison to Oghren, Zevran's, like, jokes and writing involving humor is a better quality, and I think has aged better. But I'm just not someone who has a lot of, like, I like more serious characters, so for characters like Oghren and Zevran who are very, like, jokey oriented, it kind of puts me off and it's hard to get attached. So traditionally, Zevran was a character that I would more or less ignore. And a lot of the times, towards the end of the game, when you get to, not the Landsme, it's the fucking Denerim, thank you. When you get to Denerim and then you run into the assassins from his past and then kill them. And then there's this interaction at the end where he's like, I don't, with those, the crows are going to send more, but with those specific guys gone, I'm going to have there's going to be a period where I can sort of like adventure and go out and like, I'm safe for a while. And it was kind of endearing, and it was a very vulnerable moment of him being like, I don't know what to do with my life, and this is the first time I've had complete freedom because I was with you out of protection, and now I might not need that protection anymore. And typically in that situation, I did always sympathize with that part of it because he's very much so like Liliana in that regard, and that he's a character, not necessarily, his wasn't loyalty to a person or an idea. His was very much so a forced indenture, but he's a character who has to undergo self-actualization because he was forced into a role his entire life and was never given much question, and he didn't really question it himself. He was just like, this is just my lot. And that was something else I really liked about his character, and it's something you can talk about when you get him as a companion in the game, is that you can be like, you're going to ask him about everything, and he was just like, yeah, well, I was sold into this life, but it's like, you don't get a lot of, ultimately in life, you don't get a lot of choices or control over where you end up or what happens, and surely him doing that is far better than him winding up as like, is a poor person on the streets begging for coin in Antiva. So, you know, and I like that he has this very just realistic, matter-of-fact knowledge of just like, I didn't want this life, but I sold into it. And you know, it's some of it sucks, but it's better than what it could be. But yeah, but circling way back at Denerim, when you have to get, after you kill the people who are following or chasing him, he has this moment. And typically in that moment, I was of the mind that, like, Zevran, you've never had a moment of peace in your life. You've never had a true moment of free choice or freedom. I would let him go because I'm like, you deserve. You're just an assassin. I don't know what your knives and daggers are gonna do against the Blight. But, like, you, more than anybody else in the team, deserve to just, like, fuck off and do whatever you want, considering the life you've led and everything going on. And so I did that very consistent. I think I did that majority of my playthroughs. But in the most recent playthrough, where I actually took the time to get to know him, and more specifically, I romanced him for the first time in my most recent, my final playthrough. I played as a male Kuzlund and romanced Zevran. And it just... So, I don't know if you've picked up by my general appearance and perhaps my voice, but I am a homosexual. I'm gay. I'm as gay as springtime. And romancing, some of the writing around his romance was very cringy, and I had to remind myself that it was a game from 2008 where the gay romance in video gaming, gay romance in media in general, was at a point where it was only just creeping onto the scene, but by and large was basically non-existent. So there were some moments where it was like, you know, cringe. It's please don't give me this after-school special. Gay is okay. but playing a male Kuzlin and romancing Zevran, and have my Kuzlin alongside Zevran going through a character arc of self-actualization and realizing that he is his own person and can do whatever he wants. And then my Kuzlin going through, because he's romancing Zevran and the way the romance is written, my Kuzlin also going under a story arc of self-actualization and realizing that, like, maybe he gets down with dick sometimes. My Kuzlin said, elf boys to the front. Kuzlin said, what that pussy do or not. but it got me. It really made me grateful for what Dragon Age, as an LGBT person, Dragon Age from the beginning, from the start, has been there for us in representation and giving us characters and allowing us to see ourselves in the stories that we want to see. And Zevran was, yes, Liliana was a lesbian romance possible option too, but I felt it's probably just because I'm a gay man and Zevran bi, blah 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 blah. So it resonated a bit more with me. But like, it just going through that romance for the first time with Zevran, it just made me so just grateful. It reminded me why I love Dragon Age so much, and it made me grateful to what Dragon Age has given LGBT players and people such as myself. And Zevran is one of he's a trailblazer, and I love that. And and so in my most recent playthrough, because I was romancing him, I was like, no, don't leave, baby, I love you. He stayed, and it was so sweet, and I loved it, and it made me so fucking happy. And I also do, another part of Zevran is that he's a slut. No slut. I'm not slut shaming. I'm just being descriptive. Zevran is a slut. He's never really done romance before. The closest he ever got to romance was with his former assassin colleagues, where it was like a weird 3-way relationship. But you can tell it was mostly out of a necessity and a need for affection than any genuine true love or romance. And so romancing Zevran, when you get to the Landsmeet by that point, if you're still romanced with him, there's this weird moment where like he tries, and again, it really hit me in my wheelhouse and reminded me a lot of myself. And it's just like, when you're someone who has faced a lot of hardship and trauma and just general harshness in your life, it's hard to be openly romantic and vulnerable and loving and to let those emotions out. And he has this very cute moment where he tries to give your character, I think it's either a ring or an earring, and there are different options. You can refuse it, you can take it, you can like try and make fun of him a little bit of it. And his writing around that moment, it felt so real. It felt so real. Like, this is Zevran putting down his walls, putting down the jokes about how he's slept with everybody he's ever ran into, the jokes about killing people, putting everything's like, this is just him trying to be a person and having an emotional trying to be romantic with the person that he has romantic feelings towards. And it was very sweet. That being said, with everything going on with Zevran, again, A tier, I just personally don't really like how, I mean, it both fits the character, but also I wish we got either more or less. That in the following games, he just kind of keeps showing up as a cameo. In Dragon Age 2, he gets his own quest, where it's just like, oh yeah, the crows are still after me. And then in Inquisition, there's like a series of war table quests that involve him. And then I know in Veilguard, there's this scene with, what's that fucker's name? Fuck-ass Lucanus. No, staying positive. In Lucanus's quest line, where you can see a bunch of the leaders of the crows, and there's one NPC that looks very suspiciously basically what Zevran would have looked like if he was recreated in the Veilguard engine, that a lot of people are taking as like soft canon or soft confirmation of like what Zevran is doing now or currently, or like where he winds up. And I do not subscribe to that belief. In my personal canon, Zevran and my hero of Ferelden retired in Antiva on a beach and just hang out with Isabella, and that's it. But yeah, Zevran, he was a character I didn't take seriously all that much. And then when I did take him seriously, he was a reminder of everything I loved about the series. And that he was a real player. He's A tier. Zevran is A tier. Final final opinion. Okay, now so that's everybody from Origins. That turned out a lot more evenly spread than I thought. I thought I'd just end up putting everybody in S and A tier. Because what I will say about Origins is that the companions in that game feel the most they feel the most real in a fantastical sense. That sounds inherently contradictory, and I don't know how better to explain it. But the companions in Origins, I don't think are the... I'm not going to say any one roster has the best written, because that's an argument waiting to happen. But I think they have some of the most real writing. I'm just going to leave that. Okay, so on to Awakening Cast. The Awakening DLC, I've only played, like... the DLC is only 5 to 6 hours. I think it can, like, get to 10 hours if you really try and take your time and do every single, like, little thing there is to do. So it's very short DLC. Well, long in terms of DLC. A lot of people treat it basically like it's its own game, which is fair. So, but like, you don't get to spend that much time with the companions, and the companions themselves are all very one-note. I was just thinking about this before I started recording, but the Awakening cast feels a lot like the other guys, where it's like, if the Origins cast is like, these are like the special, these are the elite forces, these are like the A tier, the heroes. It's like, then Awakening sort of shows up 10 feet behind them. It's like, oh yeah, and those are the other guys back there. They're helping. They're doing something. I don't know, but they're there. So yeah, this section is going to be very short and sweet, because again, I've only played through this DLC like 3 times, and a lot of the companions are, quite frankly, forgettable. I'm just gonna make a new tier that's of I don't remember. Sorry. I'm just gonna call it the Awakening tier. Or other. You know what? No, I'm not. I'm gonna stick to my guns on this one. Okay. Okay, so Alistair. Okay, this is gonna be across all the games. So with Alistair, I do have to judge him and how he appears in Dragon Age 2 together. So when you meet Alistair, he's very... Well, that's a bit... Because Justice is a companion in Awakening, and then Justice basically becomes part of Anders in 2. So... Wait, that's kind of hard to judge. So when you meet Anders in Dragon Age Awakening, he's very jokey. He's kind of a ladies' boy. He's very like, haha, you'll never catch me. He likes to taunt Templars because he's a Grey Warden now, and so has like immunity and can't be caught. And he's very someone who's only... This is a radical in the making who has only taken the time to understand how the system has personally affected him, and so is only really concerned with how he is personally being affected. He hasn't yet reached the point of empathy and sympathy to understand that, like, how he's being affected is also affecting many others, and there's probably a bunch of other people out there like him. In Awakening, he's very much so still in this moment of, like, I just want freedom for myself. I'm just trying to get out. I'm only concerned about myself. Not necessarily in a selfish, self-centered way, just in a more just like a self-preservation, like you ultimately as a person, you do have to put yourself first as a person, and he's at that point in his character arc of he's like, I'm just putting myself first and just trying to get out the system. Maybe once I'm out the system, I can help others also get out the system, but right now I'm looking at me. And again, the Awakening DLC is very short, and it's just the companions they're all very very flat and static, and you don't get that much growth with them. But then with Anders, that's how he starts off, and then when you get to Dragon Age 2, he's basically done a whole character arc off screen between Awakening and 2, because when you get to, I'm sorry to the Anders romancers, I'm sorry, you know what, I'm not sorry to the Anders romancers. Anders, I kind of vibed with him in Awakening, and then you get to Dragon Age 2, and I'm like, oh my god, bruh, you're such a whiny bitch, though. Bruh. Like, we get it, but can you stop crying for, like, 5 fucking minutes, though? Bruh. Whiny-ass, bitch-ass motherfucker. I'm sorry to anybody who was listening to high volume with, like, headphones in, but, like, bruh, I was not with it. I'm not with it. Like, Anders, bruh, you annoying as fuck. Like, Anders is the kind of guy that, like, in Dragon Age 2, I'm like, I'm a mage and you're making me want to go anti-mage because, like, damn, you a whiny little bitch, though. It's understandable, though. It's understandable. There's lore reasons. We get it. Mages are imprisoned. It's unfair. Yada, yada, yada. But damn, you whiny, though. And also part of that is that he's becoming increasingly, a troubled not great mental state because he is joined with Justice as a spirit. But I think whether or not you like Anders, it's unfortunate that approval doesn't change anything, because Anders, no matter what, Anders ultimately, at some point, eventually does feel more like a plot tool than an actual character. Because no matter what you do, he is going to blow up the Chantry and start the Mage Rebellion. Which, hey, I support the mages. I don't think blowing up a bunch of innocent people in a church was great. I mean, if you're gonna blow a place up, why not blow up, like, the Anders, you know? You can blow up the Templars. You can blow them up, Anders. You didn't have to blow up a bunch of innocent people in a church, my dude. Like, you going after you got your crosshairs all fuzzy there, buddy. So he does ultimately feel more like a plot tool. It feels like a tool in more ways than one, let me tell you that much, buddy. Yeah. So I think I'm just gonna have to do Anders, Justice. Because I'm considering them all one character, because Justice in the Awakening DLC he's just a spirit that wants to he's the spirit of justice, so he wants to, bring justice into the world and do good things. And then he has that one quest about how you can go to the woman who is married to the person whose body Justice is currently using, and just, like, sort of reach an agreement of, like, yo, when I'm done using this body, you can have it back. Like, I get that you're his wife, but I got priority in this situation, bitch. There's not really much of a character there. He's just, like, there. And Anders is, I think, an interesting case study. And not necessarily a case study, but he's a good representation of how systemic injustice can harden and radicalize people and leads to horrible consequences for everybody else around them. And also, he's a whiny bitch, so I'm not putting him in A tier. I'm not. Nathaniel Howell, I'm just gonna do C. And Sigrun, also C. I'm sorry I don't know anybody who is a Nathaniel or Sigrun fan, I'm sorry to all 5 of you out there. My deepest condolences and apologies. I fully do not remember anything about them. I fully do not remember. So I'm just gonna do, and that it's in itself is a mark of their writing. I feel like I had in my most recent playthrough, I did go through the Awakening quest, did do the Awakening DLC, and I fully do not remember anything about Sigrun and Nathaniel, other than Nathaniel being a bit of a dick towards you because you kill his dad in the main game. And that was, it's like, I don't, so, all respect to the Nathaniel and Sigrun fans. That's her name, right? I need to Google it. Let me Google it. Sigrun Dragon Age. Okay, yeah, I got it right. I remembered her name. Sigrun Dragon Age. All respect to all 5 of you out there. I remember nothing about them. Vallana, that's gonna be a B tier. I have a bias towards, actually, I'm gonna bring Vallana down to C. Or no, I'll bring her up to B or C. Is it my bias towards elves, specifically Dalish elves speaking, or is it true? Because Vallana is very she's a bitch. She's bitchy. She's Elf Morrigan. They literally have the same hair. They literally have the same hair. She is just even bitchier Elf Morrigan. Arguably, she has a more valid reason to be a bitch because she is an elven mage in the world of Thedas. And then I know at one point originally, Vallana was going to take the place of Anders as being the mage who, starts the Mage Rebellion in 2. And I think that would have been really interesting, seeing an elven mage. Because there's 2 forms of systemic oppression that she would then be fighting against. And also, as a Dalish mage, as a full outsider to the system. But that's probably why they ultimately didn't go with her, because, why would a Dalish mage care about the Circle? While Anders, being an escaped apostate, has a personal stake in seeing the Circles be disbanded. So yeah, you meet her, she's killing a bunch of random innocent people. Or partially innocent people, I should say. I don't fully remember what the storyline was. And then you can recruit her and help get her sister, who turns out she was turned by the architect. And then I'm just, C, B, C, because how I have it marked out is S is the above and beyond. These are the qualities, these are the characters whose writing is good enough that it goes beyond the series of the game. These are just good characters in general. They stand on their own outside of the franchise. And then A tier characters are the best written characters within the franchise, in my opinion. Or the better written, I should say. While B tier is just characters who may be a little likable, but by and large are just serviceable characters that fulfill the archetype and the roles that they were meant to fulfill with no cons or flaws, or no glaring anyway. And then C is characters who are there to fulfill an archetype or whatnot, and then I guess do have more glaring issues, or rather, we're in the case of Sigrun and Nathaniel, we're just so forgettable that it's just who are you again? And then D is going to be, again, I'm trying to keep this positive. I don't think there are, well, no, I do personally, because I'm keeping this positive, I'm not going to outright say any characters are not great written, but D is going to be the lowest I go, where D is there was, at the very least, there was a good idea behind the character. The execution was flawed, however. So I guess with Vallana, I'm just going to do C. Sorry to the Awakening fanboys. Hey, I would have also liked to have seen what happened with the Architect and Veilguard. I was a bit disappointed, but keeping it positive, no Veilguard hate. But yeah, I'm gonna have to put Milana and C. Okay. Oh, Aveline, that's an easy B. Aveline is, for her to be someone who you meet her at the start of the game. She's one of your OG companions as Hawk. I feel, my issue with Aveline as a character is that so much of what's happening in the story of Dragon Age 2, I just always want to turn to Aveline and be like, aren't you the guard captain? Why the fuck weren't you doing something about this? Like with the elves that joined the Qun and then like started poisoning the city, it was because their sister was raped and murdered, I believe. And then the city guardsmen covered it up. And then you can, if you have Aveline in your party there, you can turn to her and she was like, there was an investigation. I'm just like, if Aveline wasn't the guard captain, if they had kept her as just a guard, so she's not as in charge of the problematic, or she's not as in charge of the systemic problems that are making Kirkwall go to shit, I could give more grace and forgiveness to her character. But with the way her character is in Dragon Age 2, it's just like, girl, you were with me from the jump, and now I have to watch you become the problematic police chief who's ignoring all the real issues, and then also I have to help you start a fun little romance with a guy because both of you are too fucking oblivious to see it for yourselves. Like, I want to like Aveline because I think Aveline is one of the standouts of Dragon Age in how they excel in writing female characters beyond just being a woman. Like, Aveline is a standout in that regard. And I think her dialogue with Isabella is very funny and cute because it's the Madonna horror complex of, like, Aveline is, like, the more conservative, let's say, and so always, like, insults Isabella, and then Isabella insults her back. And you can, by the, like, towards the end of the second act, or, like, the third act, you can tell that maybe they don't necessarily like each other, but it's more friendly than it is outright animosity between the two of them. Of course, if it wasn't for Hawk, they probably wouldn't hang out. If it wasn't for Hawk, they'd probably... Bro, if it wasn't for Hawk being the mediator between them, Isabella and Aveline would be fistfighting in the streets. A dead ass, they'd be fistfighting in the streets. Aveline would grab that bitch and rip that bandana off her, beat the shit out with that bitch. Like, damn. Sorry, got distracted there. Aveline, I want to put Aveline in A because I think the character writing there is good. However, because they made her into the guard captain and so she gets interwoven into the narrative of the story, I think there's some a bit flaws there because, again, there were multiple points throughout the game where I just want to turn to Aveline and be like, why, you are the captain of the guard. Why the fuck didn't you get off your ass and do something, Aveline? Damn. Yeah, sorry to the Aveline fanboys. She's B, solid B tier. Carver and Hawk, that's C. I mean, not Carver and Hawk. Carver and Bethany. I swear, if I forgot Hawk's sister's name, I would not even post this video. I'd be like, I'm not a true fan. Kill me. They're just kind of nothing characters. Or, you know, actually, I will promote Carver to B. I'm keeping Bethany in C. But they are kind of nothing characters. They're only companions for the first act of the game, and then they either go to the Circle, or in Carver's case, go become a Templar, or they join the Grey Wardens and just kind of fuck off for a while. But, yeah, if you play as a not mage, Bethany is your reason to want to care about what's happening to mages and to want to care about the systemic oppression of the circle, because it's like that's affecting my family member who I care about. Bethany is just there to make the player care about mages if you didn't choose to play as a mage yourself. Whereas with Carver, there actually is something of a character there because he's the second son. There's animosity between the two of you because of that, because you were off if he's because if he's the one that lives, it's like you and Bethany both got to be mages and got a lot more attention from our father, whereas I wasn't a mage. So there's some not interesting, let's say, but there's at least something of substance there to him where there isn't to Bethany. Where like with Carver, at least there's a bit of animosity. There's a rivalry going on. Personally, I think he's a little bit of a bitch. It feels doubly bad because in a lot of playthroughs, I end up romancing Meryl, who it's implied that he kind of has a crush on. So it's like, damn, buddy, I stole your girl on top of all that too. I'd hate me too. Like, bitch, stole your life, stole your girl. Keep stepping, bitch. But yeah, it's just, they're just serviceable characters. Bethany's a bit emptier than Carver is all. And ultimately, they're only actual companions through the first game. They kind of fuck off through the second arc, as far as I can remember, and then they kind of like show up again in the third, and that's just it. Fenris, I love you, Fenris. Fenris, you're my favorite. He is my go-to romance. Male, mage, Hawke, and Fenris, we stan. We salute you. To all the artists who make male mage Hawke X Fenris fan art, you are worthy of millions and billions of dollars that I would give to you if I had the money to do so. That being said, with Fenris, what I like about Fenris is a lot of what I liked about Zevran, in that he's not looking. Fenris isn't looking for pity. He's looking for someone who will be a true friend to him and give him the respect that he deserves, is what Fenris is looking for. So he has this very, like, more so than Zevran, he's, like, or perhaps less so, or even, let's say, he has a bit of an air of, like, my life was tough, but I'm not here to complain about it. Although he will never waste an opportunity to bring up how awful it was. He's not looking for pity, is the point I'm saying. Fenris, I mean, as a character, he's had a very, very difficult, harsh life, and he isn't here looking for pity. He's here to get shit done, kill his slave master, and maybe make a friend or two if someone's open. So it's this really interesting dichotomy of, like, he has certain walls up, but he isn't, like, full-on defensive, all walls to the brim in the way that Morrigan is. And it's very, I like that with it, given his past and the abuse that he faced because of his master, the walls that he has put up are specifically in regards to romance and sex. And that when you do try to romance him, he does have some discomfort there. There is some discomfort, and I like showing that spotlight of, like, someone can go through abuse and be fine in most aspects of their life, but there are going to be areas that just unfortunately take more time to get through. And I did like that about Fenris. He's not there looking for pity. He's looking for a friend and kill. He's not looking for pity. He's looking for revenge and to make a friend or two. That being said, I do think at a lot of the time with him, he can come off as needlessly edgy, and the brooding gets a bit old really quickly. I mean, he, more than anybody else in the Dragon Age 2 roster, he has the right, considering everything he went through, to like brood and bemoan and complain endlessly. But like it's like bruh, it's like bruh, it's not as bad as Anders, but at some point with Fenris specifically, I think it's just more so a product of the time. Of that, like he does feel a bit needlessly edgy and emo at certain points or others. But his romance is very sweet. I like him as a character. Is that he's not like, oh, pity me, pity me. I kind of want to. It's my own personal bias. I want to put him in A. Um, does he deserve A though? I don't think any of the Dragon Age 2, which is because what I like the most about Dragon Age 2 as a game is that it is the most down to earth game. Like the stakes are ultimately very low in Dragon Age 2. So all the companions themselves feel very like real people you could actually meet. It's not, you know, I don't know if I'm making that point correctly or if I'm adequately saying that. Fenris, I love you. I love you, but do I love you enough to put my bias to the side and put you in A? It's gonna be. I think there's probably gonna be more people in S tier than there's gonna be in A tier, quite frankly. B tier, B tier, B tier. I'm just gonna say B. Final answer. Honestly, yeah, B, because this is how big of a Dragon Age fan I am. I have both of these. I read both of these. The Wraiths of Tevinter and the first 5 graphic novels. I don't recommend. The art is really good, but the writing itself isn't great. And Fenris is in those books. I believe the Wraiths of Tevinter specifically. And his writing is awful in that series. And also, Fenris should have showed up in Veilguard! Of all the Fenris, oh my god, this, I'm gonna, you know, I'm putting, Fenris is B tier. I love him to death, but that's my bias. But if I'm trying to be as objective as possible, he is a firmly B tier companion. He's brooding, but there's some vulnerability and some cute moments there that I really like. Isabella, that's A tier. Isabella is girl. Isabella is bestie. Isabella is ride or die. She's funny, hilarious. So an issue I have with characters that try too hard to be, like the scoundrel archetype, like say characters like Han Solo or like the rogue in a D&D campaign, is that there's this really fine line between being a dick and being annoying and betraying your team and then being somebody who wants to do good but has a tendency to fall on bad habits, or someone who, some people are just built different, and Isabella's one of those people. Alright, so where were we after that little accident? So Isabella is, again, some people, Isabella is messy girl representation. Some people just, for whatever reason, just are messy. They aren't great at maintaining relationships. They aren't good at maintaining boundaries. They aren't good at being clear or honest communicators. And Isabella is very, the narrative, I think, doesn't go in one strong way to either damn her or glamorize her. She's just very openly, all cards on the table. I'm a messy person. I'm not going to have shame about that, and I'm not going to be shamed about that. It's just who she is as a person. And messy girl representation. Love it, like it, live it. Isabella is just very refreshing. And I think Isabella's companion quest lines, I think, is one of the defining features of Dragon Age's companion writing, where if you do get her approval up high enough, if you do maintain a good relationship with her, when you fight the Aeroshock in Act 2 of Dragon Age 2, she actually does return and gives the book back. And then immediately following that, in the beginning of Act 3, when you talk to her, you can tell like how remorseful she is and how sorry she is, and that she has in some way, shape, or form turned over a new leaf. And I really deeply enjoyed it, and I thought it was just good quality writing from her. And again, because we're looking at the entire series, we are going to have to look at Isabella and Veilguard. And I know a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about Veilguard and how Isabella specifically appeared in Veilguard. I personally I don't think it was one of the highlights of Veilguard, but I do think Isabella's appearance in Veilguard was like a silver lining a bit. It was one of the slightly better aspects of the game, and I do think, considering what started the whole mess was her stealing a cultural artifact, her going to start a group of pirates that are basically like Robin Hoods that don't steal cultural artifacts, I think is just a natural progression of the character a bit. I mean, I know some people like it when she's a bit more selfish and self-interested, but I think ultimately her relationship with Hawke is always going to be something that brings out her better qualities rather than her worst qualities. And I thought it could have been better. I have my own issues with it. But Isabella in Veilguard was, I think, one of the better parts of Veilguard. But yeah, Isabella is... Also, again, this was another thing. Aveline and Isabella, I think, are some of the standouts of the Dragon Age's team's ability to write women as actual women. Isabella is a woman who is 100% herself and will not be shamed, and who has no shame, and she will not be shamed. And it's very, like, it's so sad that even to this day that it's still so rare and so refreshing when you do say it. But, like, the fact that Isabella is very openly, like, I'll ride the dick or not, and then I'm leaving. And it's never, and when she does that, there's never a joke, other than, like, maybe Aveline making a slut joke, of course. Then the narrative and the stories aren't going out of their way to, like, damn her for her behavior. Isabella is unapologetically, unashamedly herself, and I think she is deserving of A tier, and I am going to leave it at that. Because she is bestie, and she is messy girl representation, and we stand messy girl representation. Meryl is going to be in A tier. I have personal biases, but personal biases aside, so I think with Meryl, it's really easy, I think, for a lot of people who don't want to interact with the character or interact too much with the character or go too much into the depth of the character. It's very easy to write off Meryl as being just like, because Dragon Age 2, more so than any other game in the series, I think, is very much so a product of its time, which is 2011 or 2012, I believe. So, like, right at the height of, like, emo culture getting into the mainstream. And part of emo culture, part of what was popularized due to its closeness to emo culture was the manic pixie dream girl archetype. And I think it's really easy to write off Meryl as just being a manic pixie dream girl and then just leave it at there. But I think to just say that, while I fully am cognizant of the fact that Meryl does have manic pixie dream girl qualities to her character, to say that's all she is and nothing more, I think is an insult to the writing and to the character, and it overlooks too much about her. I would almost put Meryl in, this is a brief tangent, but I would almost put Meryl in B tier. But I think part of what keeps Meryl from just being another manic pixie dream girl product of her time of the game's release is the voice acting for Meryl is some of the best voice acting across the series, across the franchise, in my opinion. Like, just top notch. every word Meryl says sounds so genuine and heartfelt, even when it's something stupid or when she's having one of her ditzy moments. And then something that always stands out to me is in Act 2, when you go to Sundermount, because you have to put down her keeper, because the keeper decided to get possessed by a demon, so Meryl wouldn't get possessed. The writing was very complicated in that segment of the game. There's this moment where the clans people are running from her, and Meryl has like this moment where she, unfortunately, the Pole, the clansman, he dies. I shouldn't say clansman. I'm from the South. I should not be saying clansman. Where the Pole dies, unfortunately, and then Meryl like just starts weeping because she's like, I just wanted to help, and why is this? It's so vulnerable. And something I like about Meryl is that she's a character without walls, without any defenses. She is in much of the same way that Isabella is always going to be herself, but she still has some defenses. She will fall back onto humor to deflect herself. Meryl has no defenses. She is not just unashamedly herself, she is vulnerable at all times, and she does not care to protect herself. That could possibly be because of upbringing, because of clan life and everything like that, but Meryl is, in my opinion, a character who is at all times being, and again, this is very much so thanks to the top-notch quality of voice acting work that Meryl received, is at all times being genuine, heartfelt, and vulnerable to the people around her. And I think Meryl's character arc, and one more thing I'll say about the Manic Pixie Dream Girl thing is, at no point in the story did I ever think or feel that Meryl was coming across as immature or naive or just plain outright stupid. She was just a bit, just a bit airheaded and kooky. But never at any point of the game was I just like, oh my god, Meryl, grow the fuck up. And it's almost Meryl throughout the game kind of gets sent through the ringer. And so it's interesting seeing this young girl who's very openly vulnerable. And by Act 3, you can actually see some character. She's become kind of hardened. Her interactions with the other companions are very just like, she doesn't care anymore to try and argue or defend herself against Anders or Fenris. She's so just like, I'm over it. If anything, I'm sorry for you. Meryl's character just fills me with this deep sadness because so much of it reminds me of myself in some places. And seeing this girl with hope in her eyes just kind of get crushed. And I think her character arc is one of realizing that you have limits. There's only so much you can do. And good intentions don't help in a bad situation. Also, her romance is just really sweet. Like, I love when I do playthroughs of Dragon Age 2, it's like, if I want drama, like the drama, Fenris romance is it. If Fenris romance for a drama, Meryl romance if I just want something sweet and nice. It's very sweet and nice and cute, and I like it. Because there's nothing more just like it. Typically, I hate like cinnamon roll content, like overly cutesy, ootsy bullshit like that. I think it's age regression. But with Meryl's romance specifically, there's something just so rewarding, and it gets me in my feels, like seeing this person who's just very openly like, I like you and I want to be with you, and then Hawke returning that affection in the same sense of being like, well, I like you too, and I just want us to be happy together. It's so sweet. I think Meryl is definitely, like many of the companions in the game, she is a product of her time. I think she goes above and beyond just being a manic pixie dream girl trope, and I think because of that, she deserves A tier. Also, for people who might be listening with headphones, I would highly recommend for the next 2 minutes to maybe turn the volume down because again, I'm keeping this positive. I'm going to avoid Veilguard hate overly so, but okay, this is the screaming part. Please turn volume down and take headphones out. Why wasn't Meryl in Veilguard? Her entire fucking character arc is about her devotion to the elven people and elven culture and doing everything she can to restore a fucking Alluvian. And then you want to... She doesn't get fucking referenced, named, nothing is said about her in all of Veilguard when basically that entire fucking game is just like, this is everything we know about the elves and everything they were fucking did. And Meryl was like basically as far as we knew, the Alluvian expert, and then we just get fucking replaced by Balara, and there's no mention of Meryl anywhere or anything. Meryl, that was the thing that fucking pissed me off so fucking much. Meryl should have been in Veilguard, or at the very least, fucking cameoed. It's fucking bullshit that she's just nowhere to be seen, giving everything about the character. Okay, that's everything I had to say on that matter. Meryl belongs in A tier, and that is that. Going forward. Okay, Sebastian's D tier. I don't have to explain that. Sebastian's D tier. He's D tier. Varric goes in A. Varric is interesting. My feelings towards Varric are interesting because I did not care for Varric much at all. In Dragon Age 2, he's very much so, in my opinion, he feels forced onto the player character as being your best friend. And I really do hate in gaming when the game throws a companion at you at like very early in the game and basically it makes them act like y'all are besties before you even have the time to develop your own personal feelings towards the person. It really rubs me the wrong way in gaming, and in Dragon Age 2, I thought his humor doesn't overstay its welcome. He has a few funny moments. There's some I think there's some glimmers of depth there, because ultimately Varric is a character who at all times is hiding behind a facade of being a joke, or a facade of being a jokey guy, so he doesn't have to interact with the depth and the reality of what's happening around him. Mostly in Dragon Age 2, and then that facade sort of breaks away throughout Inquisition. So in Dragon Age 2, I was just very ambivalent towards him, and I did not care for the fact that he was forced onto Hawke as being his best friend. Then in Inquisition, he's one of the 3 companions you get at the start of the game. Between Cassandra, who imprisoned you, interrogated you, and is a bit rough around the edges, and then Solas, who's mostly just there to give a lot of early game exposition. Varric being the first companion who was openly nice to you and was asking about you specifically, it kind of felt like a repeat of like, okay, so this is going to be like in Dragon Age 2, where he's going to be forced as being like my best friend or whatever. But side note, Inquisition was actually my very first game. And even in my first playthrough of Inquisition, not knowing anything about Dragon Age as a series, interacting with Varric, I was like, why is this dude here? Why is he here? And so, in Inquisition, once you get, a little after you get to Skyhold, there's this conversation you can have with Varric, where he very openly is like, I don't know why I'm here, or why these people are here, or why anybody wants me here. Not in necessarily a self-deprecating way, but just like in a very openly blunt manner. And they didn't necessarily get me to like him, but it made me more, I was just like, oh, at least he finally fucking addresses it. It's like, why the hell, like, you have a crossbow and you know some people, and so you're gonna be like in my inner circle? Okay, I guess. But yeah, I didn't much care for him in Dragon Age 2, and then in Inquisition, I was mostly ambivalent. And then in Dreadwolf is actually what got me to like Varric as a character, because even though spoiler for this game, I hate spoiler alerts, it's just, ugh. So Varric dies very early on, basically at the beginning of the game of Dreadwolf, and who you're interacting with is, from my understanding, the Varric you're mostly interacting with in Dreadwolf was a spirit made out of your memories of him that's being soft autopiloted by Solus. But instead of Varric being forced onto the player as like your best friend, having him be a mentor to your rook made the context of the relationship make more sense, and it allowed me to actually sort of, it got me right. Basically, no longer having him forced on me as a friend made me like him more, and I don't think Varric is a particularly noteworthy character in terms of writing. I don't think he's anything really special. He is just a very he's just well executed in the tropes and archetypes that he fulfills and the role that he fulfills within regards to the narrative. And him narrating the epilogue at the end of or at the end of Veilguard, will always bring me to tears, because I can't even repeat the words because I will start crying. So yeah, Varric is just an A-tier companion. He's just executed well. And now I need to move on past that, because if I think about the Trespasser deal, the Veilguard epilogue, I will start crying. Okay, now we've reached the point of Inquisition, where we have 9 companions and 3 advisors, and holy shit, I did not think this video would be so fucking long. I am sorry to anybody who has made it this long. You're a trooper. I'm sorry you've had to listen to my voice. Holy shit, this is long as fuck. Did not think it would be. I thought it'd be like maybe an hour and a half tops. Okay, so yeah, I'm not hearing anything on it. Blackwall, Thom Rainier is an A-tier companions. Specifically in the context of, I think Thom Rainier is he is sort of a mirror to Solus, in that they are both characters that when you meet them, they aren't being honest about who they are. They're lying about their identities, and they've both done horrible things to their past. And the difference is that what Solus has done is, one, so far removed from current times, and is also of such fantastical proportions that it's hard to put it into picture. Whereas what Thom Rainier did, he murdered a family. And so because it's more realistic, it hurts more when he does reveal it, and it's easier to sort of turn on him than it is for Solus for some reason. At least that's my understanding. Apparently, there's a lot of people who just do, the moment they found out Thom Rainier was lying, they're like, execute him. Or send him to the deep roads, or whatever the, like, option of getting rid of him was. So, just, like... But... Thom Rainier he speaks to me so deeply, in that he has made mistakes, and all he wants, he's just a singular, simple man who just wants to make the world better than it is, who wants to have hope. He is a grounded version of Superman, in my opinion. And him having all this hope, this fervent belief in redemption, and wanting to see the good in most people, and wanting to make the world a better place, because he is so filled with hatred towards himself, is... God, it's... Thom Rainier's romance, I think, is one of the better romances in Inquisition, and one of the better romances across the game. Thom Rainier is my comfort character. I love him. This is probably fully biases, but Thom Rainier is A-tier, and I won't hear anything about it. Thom Rainier, A-tier. We love him. We support him. He's hot as fuck. Thom Rainier hot as fuck. Like, you see that romance tarot card when he's got his abs out? I'm like, Tom. Oh, Tom Rainier. Oh God, he's hot as fuck though. And he all he wants is to be better than what he was before, and I think that's something we can all sympathize with and idealize. Hands out for Tom Rainier. Hands out for Tom Rainier. Cassandra, A tier. Cassandra's A tier. She is a woman motivated by her fervent faith and belief in justice. And I think in many ways, she's just the better written version of Aveline. And Cassandra is bestie. What I like about Cassandra is that she has such fervent belief, but she is at all times being conscious and cognizant of the fact of, like, when you believe something too strongly, it can lead to systemic. When you believe something too strongly and then try to enforce it the same way every time, it can create systemic issues that create more issues down the line. And so she's at all times, while very firm in her belief, also going through reflection and constantly being like, oh, well, this is something I do firmly believe, but, like, is this right, or should something be changed? She is not above letting other people not criticize her is the right word, but critique, I should say. She's not above doing self-critique, and she's not above hearing the opinions of others. She's a strong-willed woman. She's she's just good. Cassandra is Cassandra. I don't know how better else to describe it. I wish you could have 4 companions in your party in Inquisition, so Cassandra could stay in my party all the time. Cassandra is bestie, and that's it. Also, her romance is just really nice and sweet. I haven't done it myself, but I've watched all the cutscenes through YouTube, and it's just very, like, it's nice seeing a woman who does the full spectrum of, like, is fulfilling what some might consider a more masculine role, but is still, like, has a softness and a sweetness and loves romance. So she, more so than most other companions and characters across Dragon Age, Cassandra feels like a fully actualized 3-dimensional human being. Just top-notch quality writing. Cole, I like Cole, but he goes into C tier. Cole is a plot device that is useful for getting hidden information and dialogue out of places and other NPCs, and that's about it. And his storyline of either becoming more spirit or becoming a person, it felt not half-assed, but rather, I don't know, forced, I guess is the word is. My only reason for liking Cole is, and it's difficult because he's a spirit, not a person. Spirits are inherently, like, just shallow beings, in a sense of the word. I've only ever kept Cole in my party when I'm like, I want to hear what he's going to say about this, because Cole knows all the secrets about everything. And now, as someone who's played through Inquisition at least 10 times, I'm like, I don't even have him, but I know everything already. I don't need him to tell me it. So I think Cole's writing, Cole is a C tier. Colon straight to B. And now, for anybody who judges me for this, let me ask you this. If Colin wasn't hot, would you like him? I want everybody who immediately jumped to the comments or got angry and was like, how dare. If Colin wasn't hot, would you like him? Because Colin, in my mind, is fully, like, the dude who would have, like, very conservative beliefs, but then, like, make exceptions from time to time. Or that's incorrect to say. Not that he would have conservative beliefs, but he would be like, oh, well, no, he's the person who advocates for change from within rather than, like, actual systemic, like, real change. He's like, oh, there's just a flaw in the system, but we can make it better than it was before. But, like, when the thing is rotten from the root, there's, like, that's just what Colin reminds me of specifically. And it's hard to look past that. I think he's a nice person. He's a nice person, but like, yeah, if Cullen wasn't hot, would you like him? If Cullen wasn't hot, would you like him? That's then really, and Cullen is, I think, a really interesting character because then you do see his growth across all three games. You can see him as a young recruit in Origins, a young Templar recruit in Origins, where where he's wide-eyed and bushy and is very clearly new to it and has all these sorts of ideas and beliefs about what Templars should be, only to immediately get traumatized by the horrible, like, what he had to witness, which is very scarring for him. And then you can see him again, and then in 2, where there's still some semblance of, or no, I would say he has worked through the trauma enough that he's, like, okay and sane and can operate around mages. But you can see him sort of falling into a hole of radicalization because of his own trauma that causes him to hesitate and wait to criticize or call out Meredith for her own behaviors. And then in Inquisition, you can sort of see him trying to return to who he was post-trauma and trying to remember, like, this is what Templars are supposed to do. And so I think Cullen is an interesting case study in the dangers of radicalization and how you can, if you give people the space to heal and you give them a way out, there is a way to stop someone from becoming a horrible radicalized person. Outside of that, though, he is I mean, let's be honest here. He was just like, we need a hot, safe guy romance option. And they chose him. And I mean, hey, it worked. Bitches went crazy for him. But if he wasn't hot, would you like him? I firmly am of the opinion, if he wasn't hot, he would probably actually be quite hated. So yeah, I think Cullen is just like a B tier. I think he has good quality writing. I think he has his high points. Not too many low points, but he doesn't stand out too much among the wider cast of characters. Dorian C. I don't like Dorian. I do not like Dorian. I don't like Dorian. This is the video that is going to, like, see me get hate mail and death threats. I do not care for Dorian, and then this is fully my bias. I have a lot of issues with Dorian. A lot of issues. First and foremost, this goes back to my very first playthrough of Dragon Age Inquisition, which was my first game, which I played in 2015. So I'm gay. I think I already said that before. And then, so playing through Inquisition while I was in high school and going through my own journey of being gay, and then playing this fantasy game, and then getting to know Dorian and everything, and his storyline in Inquisition ultimately being, obviously this is a bit reductionist and takes away some of the nuance, but his storyline, like, breasts or Texas are just like mostly just is daddy didn't love me because I'm gay. Going through a fantasy game like that and seeing because it just also at that time in media, it felt like every gay character's story was just like, it was either a story of them coming out or a story of them trying to make peace with their family because their family rejected them. Which, I mean, hey, that happens. That happens. I've faced similar things. I know other people have gone through. It is something that happens. But playing through this game, which in some ways was meant to be an escapist fantasy from what I had to go through in real life, and then seeing a gay character, and the gay character storyline was still just, daddy didn't love me because I'm gay, it was total, just eye rolled from me, like, oh my god, seriously, we we can't get fucking past this moment. We still have to do the gay character storyline. Still has to be Daddy Didn't Love Me. Really, 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 really. Ugh, it was just moans and sighs and eye rolls from me, and it was very frustrating. But that's my trauma. And then also, aside from that, another issue I have with Dorian's character is one in similar to, or not similar, not necessarily as bad as Varric. I do feel like Dorian is a bit pushed onto the Inquisitor as being like their best friend, and I feel like when you go through the characters and you look at their approval, like the things they disapprove and majorly approve or just slightly approve or whatever, Dorian, I feel like because of the time period that the game came out in, because they didn't want to risk a character becoming a target for homophobia, they made it so Dorian hands out high approval for, or major approval for so many things that if you do like one quest line for him, he immediately starts treating you like your best friends. And I feel like they did that so the character wouldn't have negative feelings towards the character and then start associating those negative feelings with the fact that Dorian was gay. That is my scatterbrained theory of it. But Dorian gives out major approval for little to no reason and then immediately starts treating your Inquisitor like your best friends, and it was very off-putting for me. And I did not care for it. Also, another issue I have with Dorian is that I hate characters who are like, oh, aren't I so witty and charming and fancy just because I speak with like a faux British accent and every other thing I say is sarcastic. And it's like, no, you're not witty and charming. You're just kind of annoying and a bit of a bitch. Like, I hate characters who are like where it's like, aren't they so charming and elegant? And it's like, no, you're just kind of a snobbish asshole. Also, Dorian straight up, he later does, like, I believe in Trespasser, and then when you run into him in Veilguard, he becomes very openly anti-slavery. But I will never forget in Inquisition that he is a character, in the base game, he outright does defend slavery as being better than poverty. It's just like, which, I think that's actually a quality of good writing. Dorian is a noble from a slave empire. He should, even if he was progressive, him still thinking slavery is better than poverty is an opinion he probably would have and the best thing you could expect from him. And I think that's decent world building to give characters like that very strong opinions that are dissonant with our own cultural norms. But, like, that doesn't make me like you more, and actually because of that, I think maybe I should bring him to B tier. I'll put Dorian in B tier. Yeah, I would personally put him in C, but I'm trying to be objective. Iron Bull is A tier. Iron Bull is A tier, and here's my reasons. 1, he's hot. Also, Iron Bull isn't a particularly, there isn't that much content for him in the story, and he's a fairly simplistic character, but you need more simple characters to make more, I said this earlier in the video, but you need more simple characters or more static characters or more flat characters to make the interesting characters more interesting. You need that dichotomy, you need that difference between them, you need that space, because if every character is trying too hard to be like this, if every character had the same amount of lore and complication in their story as Solas, then it would just be exhausting. And that being said, though, I think Iron Bull does have a nice amount of depth underneath the surface. And similar to Oghren, that he is someone who was raised in a culture, and then whereas Oghren constantly struggled against his culture, Iron Bull initially embraced it, was happy with it, but once he gets a chance to live outside of it, realizes that he, on some level, I think on some level, Iron Bull, when you initially meet him, is already aware that, like, he would not be able to go back to traditional Kunari living and traditional Kunari culture, because he's become his outside of the Kyun, he has self-actualized into the version of himself that makes him happy and that he likes. And I think there's a nice amount of depth underneath his surface of just being like the funny himbo character. Also, again, this is my personal bias for why I think I think he is a bit more of a B tier, but I'm putting in A tier because nothing will ever stop me. Nothing will ever beat the feelings I had of. I did not, when I first got Dragon Age, I didn't know that there were gay romances. I didn't know gay romances were even a thing in video games at the time. I had no idea. And in my very first playthrough of Dragon Age, I played as a female elf and I romanced Blackwall. Then in my second playthrough, I did a male elf. I wasn't expecting to see any romances, but then when I was talking with Iron Bull and then I saw the romance option pop up as a male elf, I was like, never before in gaming have I ever felt more represented or seen in this moment. And Iron Bull's romance, I think it is a bit lacking. It could have used more content. It feels a bit short. I think I think the Trespasser DLC helps with that by implying that the two of y'all can get married like sometime off screen. But it was very genuine, and it's nice, it's cute, it's fun, and I never felt more seen or represented. Iron Bull, he is a very serviceable character who fulfills his archetype well without being too tropey and boring. And I don't really have any criticisms of him other than the fact that, like, more so with this is more of a game specific, he just doesn't have as much content in comparison to the other companions. Also, I like to steal him from Dorian because Dorian doesn't deserve him. Sorry, Dorian. Okay, Josephine. I think Josephine's B tier. I like Josephine. There just isn't as much content for her. Josephine is bestie. Josephine is my best friend. The advisors feel this really nice niche of, like, making the Inquisition truly feel like the Inquisition, like making it feel like an organization. And I think Josephine, being the diplomat, fulfills her role well. I don't really have any criticisms for her character. I just don't think her character gets a lot of standout moments and doesn't get a lot of times to, like, flex the quality of her writing. I think she's just an interesting, or not interesting, I should say, but rather I think Josephine is just a nice display of someone who very strongly believes in pacifism and diplomacy first. And I enjoy that about her character. I think she's just a very decent quality character that I personally really liked. And I liked that at the beginning of the game, she's one of the very first people to reach out to your Inquisitor and truly ask, like, if they're okay as a person. Like, she's like, you good? I'm like, yeah, Josie. I just like Josie. She's nice. There's nothing more there's nothing, and ultimately I think that's why she's in B tier rather than A tier, because that's all you can really say about Josephine is that she's nice. Oh yeah, I put Leliana in S tier, and so I'm looking at the series as a whole. So Leliana back to S tier. Sarah. Sarah's going to B tier. Is she A tier material? I don't know. So Sarah, as someone who almost always plays elves, I obviously have a lot of issues with Sarah because she is the Uncle Ruckus of elves. Also, I think her very weird, out there, like, lol, so random humor I don't think it was funny even when I first played the game in 2015, and I don't think it's any funnier now. Like, going around throwing pies. It was just very stupid. I did not care for it. I don't think it really fits in the game either, and it does make Sarah look needlessly immature. But I think what keeps Sarah in B tier rather than me throwing her into C tier is that in Dragon Age, a lot of our companions we have like Cassandra, a Seeker, or Leliana, a Orlesian spy, or Alistair, the lost heir of the Ferelden throne, or characters like Dorian, who's a Tevinter noble. And like we get all these characters who are from positions or places of power, whether that be political or more metaphysical. Like characters who come from backgrounds and upbringings where they have all this knowledge of the world. And Sarah is sort of an antithesis of all that, in that she's a commoner. She's just a poor elf girl from Ferelden who somehow wound up alongside all these other people. And then when you remember that context, it makes all of her beliefs and her opinions more understandable, because like her opinions and her feelings are the opinions of someone in a medieval society where most people are illiterate and can't read. Your only source of information is just believing what the Chantry tells you, more or less. Yeah, someone like Sarah is going to have a lot of strong, perhaps ignorant beliefs. And I think remembering that and putting that into context of her character makes your character stand out as a good representation of like, and I think in fantasy we forget too much of like, what would the common man be like? Sarah is what the common man, I mean, disregarding her lol so random humor and the way she talks, Sarah is the common man, or woman in this case, or elf woman, blah, 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 whatever. And I think that makes her it gives her a very specific niche, and it gives her her own identity that really I don't think none of the other companions come all that close to touching. Like Sarah is very singular, specific, and unique. But I think her humor keeps her back from being A tier. So yeah, she's firmly B tier. Sarah's B tier. Solas. Do I want to do S tier? Do I think Solas deserves S tier? Yeah, Solas deserves S tier. Much in the same way Meryl went from B tier to A tier because of her voice acting. Solas's voice actor elevates him from A tier to S tier. That being said, about the character themselves, I don't know what can be said about Solas that hasn't been said already in like a million other YouTube essays. Nothing broke my mind more than finding out absolutely everything we knew about him was a lie or a fabrication, and finding out, going through the Trespasser DLC for the first time, it's just, there's nothing to be said about again, there's nothing I can say about Solas that hasn't been said a million other times, far better, by far higher quality YouTube video essayists or other people with blogs who post about stuff like this. Solas is alongside Loghain, Solas is one of the best written characters in Dragon Age. I would argue, the best written villain of Dragon Age, and one of the best written characters in all of modern gaming. I fail to think of characters who reach the same highs as Solas in terms of the quality of their writing. I don't have anything else to say. Solas is a firm S tier character. Vivienne goes to A tier. And here's why. Again, this is one of the things where like Solas or Dorian's opinion towards slavery. Not that I necessarily disagree with Vivienne's opinions towards the Circle. I'm pro mage freedom, but I'm pro Circle. I think the mages do need the Circle. And that's the thing with Vivienne, is that she gives a lot of firm answers to hard questions. And she really brings it back down to reality of like, sure, ideally we could all believe in everybody being free and like singing songs in the rainbow, but that's not reality or the world we live in. That's like we need to have systems and balances in check to keep people safe from people who pose a danger to others. We need, unfortunately, there needs to be bureaucracy, there needs to be systems. And she is the perfect representation, I think, of, or not the perfect representation, I should say, but rather she very eloquently puts that in her line. She has the voice line, magic is dangerous just as fire is dangerous. Anybody who forgets that truth gets burned. Again, we can all have all these wonderful beliefs of like absolute freedom and idealism, but you need to always keep at least one foot in reality, or you'll end up causing far more harm in the name of good than you would have otherwise. Also, I think Vivian actually has a surprising amount of depth to her character. I mean, when you really get into her backstory and everything about that, this is a girl who basically had nothing and then rises to be the mistress of an Orlesian noble, which a lot of, I find this very disheartening. A lot of people in the Dragon Age fandom like to use that against her and say, oh, well, she doesn't actually have to face anything. She just got ahead by sleeping with a noble. In a medieval society with a monarchy and a nobility, and this is something that happened in the real world, this was very real, especially for women, the only way to get ahead in society was to, by one of the very few methods of getting ahead in society for a woman who did not have noble birth was to become a mistress for someone who was of noble parentage. And I feel like because Dragon Age, this is an issue I have with the Dragon Age franchise. Dragon Age doesn't do enough to remind people that this is a medieval setting with medieval norms and customs. So people tend to overlook Vivian as being like, oh, so she just slept with the guy to get out of it. And I'm like, that's what else were you expecting her to do? Like, come the fuck on. And I like Vivian as a character because everybody always says she's a bitch, but she knows it. I personally don't think she's that much of a bitch, quite frankly. I think she's just very blunt and matter of fact about everything. But yeah, with Vivian, I really like her. I think she could have used a bit more content in the base game. But with Vivian specifically, when you recruit her, she's very upfront about the fact that she's joining the Inquisition because she sees it as a method of gaining more social prestige and influence, and it will benefit her power structures that she supports. She's very upfront about that. But through the game, if you maintain high approval with her, she's one of the companions where more so than some of the others, I would say, she truly does feel like a friend and a peer rather than just like a work friend. Like, she blurs the line. She doesn't blur the line. She goes from work friend to like actual friend. Whereas I would say, for as much as I like Leliana, and for as much as I like what's another Inquisition companion, for as much as I like Leliana and Dorian, or not Dorian, I hate Dorian. Whereas Leliana and Alistair and Josephine, of course, this is probably because they are your counts, because they're your advisors, are not full companions. They feel more like work acquaintances or work friends rather than real friends. Although Josephine, I would say, also does a good job at blurring that line, and say between the advisors, Josephine feels the most like a real friend. Vivian, in comparison to a lot of other companions across the franchise, not just in Inquisition, feels like she goes from this person who we like each other, but ultimately we're just working alongside each other because we have a similar goal. Vivian goes fully into I truly feel like if you maintain high approval with her, she does feel like a true friend. And I like that again, she could have benefited from a lot more content in Inquisition because she doesn't really have that much. But her companion quest in Inquisition is, I feel like not enough people didn't understand it. So we just showed up to watch your husband die. It was her allowing herself to be vulnerable. It was her allowing herself to be vulnerable around other people. Vivian quite literally and very openly about is very open about it. She puts up a mask. She has literally taken the title of Madame Defer, the Lady of Iron. She is at all times maintaining this facade of coldness and ruthlessness, and her allowing herself to be vulnerable around you and bringing you with there through what was a very harsh moment for her, even though she doesn't do it, because even in her most vulnerable state, she still can't help but maintain some level of composure. I really do like it. I think Vivian also is one of those characters who benefited from top-notch quality voice acting. Vivian's a firm A tier. Everybody else who has other opinions, get out the fucking door. And this is the part where we finally get to Veilguard. Let me check. Are we still recording? Okay, we're still recording. I swear to God, if this shit stopped recording again, like, mid whatever, I would just have not done this video and been like, fuck it, we're not. So we're finally at Veilguard. Oh, this is going to be tough. I'm going to keep it positive, and I'm going to keep it nice. Because I'm working through my emotions. Yes, we're zen. So, Veilguard. Bellara. I think Bellara is B tier. Do I think Bellara is B tier? What is there to say about Bellara? I think Bellara is... People called Meryl Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Bellara is Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Bellara is 100% Manic Pixie Dream Girl. And I don't think she does as good enough of... In so many ways, Bellara just feels like worse written Meryl. Like, Bellara really just showed up and took Meryl's entire flow, bars and all, and then just did it worse. Like, I get trying to be positive and just objective, but like, oh God, does Bellara just feel like worst written Meryl in so many fucking ways. And also, again, it's the same storyline too, of just like being devoted to elven culture and the elven people and wanting to... God knows Bellara couldn't shut up about it, wanting to relearn about artifacts. And then having to decide, like, what is this worth doing? And what is worth keeping? Like, even if is it something worth keeping if it hurts you? God. I don't know. I think she's serviceable. I think Bellara starts off very rough at the start of the game. Because the game, obviously... as someone who followed the development of the game from, like, the moment we heard the first news about it, there's this tone shift, like, halfway through the game, where Bellara becomes a lot less annoying, and I think she benefits from that. It's just like, and the things that annoy me about Bellara aren't so terrible as to like be worthy of a lower tier. I think she's just B tier, but just barely. She's fine. She's fine. She's fine. Bellara is just she is just a serviceable character. I'm bringing her down to C. I'm bringing Bellara down to C. Davrin gets D. D for Davrin. There was so much to work with Davrin as a Dalish warden in a game that was all about confronting the Evanuris, who turned out to be the starters of the Blight. And Davrin's entire character arc basically boiled down to check out this cute pet we spent more time with us, at least this is how it felt, and I've played through Veilguard 3 times. I've done 3 complete playthroughs. And one of which Davrin was one of the companions, was one of my main party companion members. It felt like we spent more time discussing Asan than we did actually getting to know Davrin as a character. It was, like there was so much that could have been done with Davrin's character. I think at its core there are some, again, as a Dalish warden having to fight against the Evanuris, the old elven gods who turned out to be the people who started the Blight, and what we get is a guy just having to figure out how to take care of his pet. Like, I don't... Davrin. Emmerich, I love Emmerich. Emmerich gets... Does Emmerich get A tier because he's the best written character? Like, is it because the characters... Is it because the writing in Veilguard is of such a quality that Emmerich being serviceable makes him appear higher than he is? Or... You know, I love Emmerich. I romanced him all 3 playthroughs because he's the only person worth romancing in that entire game, in my opinion. Keeping it positive, staying positive, not gonna unnecessarily criticize the game. Yeah, you just... I love Emmerich, but, like, he's the companion you get the last. He's the last companion you get, I believe. I'm pretty sure. You get him right. It's him and Tosh are the last 2 companions you can get, and then you can decide whether or not you want to get Tosh first or Emmerich first. So because of that, there's already, you've gone like maybe 5 to 10 hours into the game. So he just has less content. And then you get Emmerich. He's nice. I like the subversion of a very, like, this genteel necromancer. He's a very handsome older man. I like everything about Emmerich, but there just isn't much, even for him to be the best written companion in Veilguard, in my opinion, there just isn't that much character there. He's just generally affable and polite and nice, and then you learn that he has a deep-seated fear of death, and then you get to decide whether or not he becomes a lich. And that's kind of it. He's serviceable, and he is the best written companion in the game of Veilguard. And I love him dearly because I love old men. But yeah, Emmerich, just B tier. Just B tier. And that is the highest anybody is going to get in Veilguard. Harding, God, does Harding deserve C or D? Harding does... My issue with Harding is, one, it should have been... Harding didn't have any... Harding was very happy being... She thought... Like, when you meet her in Inquisition, she doesn't really think of herself as elf or as dwarf first, and she isn't that concerned with dwarf culture, customs, or sensibilities. She really thinks of herself as, like, Ferelden first, elf, or dwarf second. So giving her this storyline that was all about an exploration of dwarven culture and history, it should have been Dagna as a companion. It should have been Dagna. Dagna, of poor Dagna. Poor Dagna. Also, in many ways, Harding in Veilguard felt like she age regressed from Inquisition. And Inquisition, she's very... Of course, it's because as the Inquisitor and the Herald of Andraste, she's speaking to a superior, whereas in Veilguard, she's speaking to Rook, who's a peer. So, of course, you're going to address someone who's in charge of you differently than you would address the person who's, like, on your same level. That makes sense. But in between the two, in Inquisition, she felt... I didn't really have any strong feelings about Harding in Inquisition. She was there. I thought she was fine as is. It was fun getting to talk to her whenever you went to a new area or zone or whatever, and getting her, like, 2 bits about the location. But she was very just, like, just a down-to-earth, matter-of-fact person who every once in a while tried to make an awkward joke. And I thought she was fine. She was fine. She was nice. And then in Veilguard, she becomes this, like, whatever is adjacent to Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Manic Pixie Dream Girl adjacent. and is like cottagecore obsessed and wants to go. Again, this is an issue not necessarily with the writing of the character, but just with the writing of the game. Why are you going out camping while there's a blight? Why are you going out camping while there's a blight? She just feels age regressed. And then also there wasn't enough after you keep her from like being angry or happy about the Titan. Her storyline, her character arc, and her quest line was very like it just did not. It didn't really lead anywhere, and it didn't make that much sense to me. And so when towards the end of the game, where you have to choose between her or Davrin dying, I was like, oh, well, that's why, because they were just gonna kill her off. I mean, I killed off Davrin because I thought Davrin was more boring, and I will have just a certain level of bias towards Harding because she is in Inquisition, which was my favorite game. Lucanus D tier. I know what I said. I know what I said. I was going to keep it positive. I can't keep it positive with Lucanus. I don't believe there's... Lucanus gets F tier. Lucanus is F tier. Lucanus, when the first trailer came out, I smelt what they were selling with Lucanus immediately. And it was so fucking... Everything about him is so just factory made, generic, boring. Like, they made him, he is just the quintessential Tumblr sexy man. It's so everything about him was just made to appeal to people who want like the broody bad boy who's like sensitive. Or he's not, Lucanus is not a character. He's a list of adjectives poorly thrown together into the semblance of what appears to be a person, and it's not. He's nothing about Lucanus succeeds, in my opinion. Nothing about the character succeeds at anything it's doing. There's no character arc. He's possessed by a demon, and you don't get to really explore that at all. You just like, he just kind of quietly comes to peace through it without the story, without you really having much input on it. And for some reason, what ends up being the defining moment of his character arc is whether or not he chooses to imprison his brother or forgive his brother. Lucanus is just everything wrong. Is like the epitome and the gatherings of everything wrong with that game. God. I was trying to keep it positive, but I just can't. I can't with Lucanus. He's so just factory made milquetoast. Like, it was so obvious he was going to be the most romanced companion for the people who are for people who like to date men, let's say. It was so obvious he was going to be the most picked. And then I will fully admit, in the months following the release of Veilguard, when everybody was complaining about Lucanus and the quality of his writing, how lackluster his romance is, and the lack of content, everybody was complaining about it because he was the most picked male romance. The way I was laughing in a corner because I romanced Emmerich knowing Lucanus was going to be... because I smelt that bullshit from miles away. It's like, that's on you for having poor taste. That's on you for picking the vanilla... That's on you for picking the Oreo, the vanilla option. The thing that was buttered and bread specifically to look tasty, but actually wasn't. He is butter on white bread. He's not even butter on white bread. He's just white bread. Just empty, boring, and ugh. Neve, I actually like Neve. Or is it Nev or Neve? Is it Nev? Nev? I'm saying Nev. I'm saying Nev going forward. I liked Nev. I think there were some interesting ideas going on throughout the character arc and the story. I just think she was a bit... The voice actress, I think, brings down Nev more than anything. That, and also that her character just was, like, a bit flat. this is more so towards the beginning of the game, where you can tell that initially Veilguard was being written in a different direction, that it ended up going into another direction midway through development. But Nev just comes across as, like, just a bit boring, quite frankly. She's just very blunt. Just dry. Very dry. And her character arc and storyline of wanting to maintain hope, wanting to maintain idealism in the face of such conflict, in the face of such opposition, I think is good motivation for the character. I think it works. I just don't think it was successfully written in a way, because towards the end, she either becomes, like, it's basically, do you want to become the Batman or the Punisher? It was her storyline. It's like, do you want to be the Batman or the Punisher? I think the ideas are there. I just did not land perfectly on execution. If I honestly, Nev, I'm gonna put you in. I put Dorian in B tier. Nev can be in B tier. And I don't even fucking like Dorian. But I'm trying to be objective. Tosh, that's D. That's D. Having a character whose entire character arc was about self-actualization and self-discovery. Sorry if anybody heard that. I just bumped against the mic. Having a character whose entire story was about self-actualization and self-discovery, and then having the end of their character arc be having to choose between two cultures, when the whole point was about embracing yourself, is so contradictory and doesn't make any sense at all. That shouldn't have been a choice. Like, oh, yay, Tosh, now you have to choose between whether you want to embrace your Kunari side or your Rivaini side, even though this entire fucking story was about you just trying to be yourself. Because apparently picking a culture is a binary decision. That's the most glaring issue with Tosh. And the second part, I'm not going to get too into it because it's a whole fucking can of worms. But as an LGBT person, the writing around Tosh felt very much so like an after-school special. It felt like an after-school special. It was like, it didn't feel like it was writing by an LGBT person for LGBT people. It felt like it was writing for straight people to understand LGBT issues, if that makes sense. It just felt very much so like an after-school special. It felt like something cheesy from Netflix. The only reason Tosh stays from F tier is because I think some of her dialogue was actually quite funny. Also, again, with this, and my final issue with Tosh is that with this to be the final game in the series, the stakes have never been higher. The last thing I'm trying to deal with and put up with is an angry teenager going through an identity crisis. There are bigger fish. We have two blighted gods trying to take over and destroy the world, and you can't figure out whether or not you want to wear a dress, and that's the biggest issue in your life. Like, way to be so out of touch from reality. Oh my god. Like, I want to like Tosh, but the writing makes it so hard to do. Oh, god. And now we are finally at the end. And I have finally finished this. This has turned out way longer than I thought. I'm honestly kind of impressed with my choices. I really thought I'd end up, my own biases would shine in too much, and I'd end up putting everybody in, like, A tier or S tier, but I'm actually surprised by how much restraint I showed, but Yeah, I don't think this video is going to get a lot of final words, final everything. I don't think this video is going to get a lot of viewage or traction, and even if it does, I doubt that many people are going to sit through the whole thing and make it to this point. But for those who did, thank you so much. And secondly, I want to say, as someone who didn't have a lot of friends growing up, I still really don't. Dragon Age made me feel less alone during some of the most vulnerable times of my life, and I will never be able to stop thanking the series for what it gave me. Dragon Age is what inspired me to want to become a writer. It was my dream to one day join BioWare and help write the future of the series. Dragon Age is one of the best things I've ever experienced and witnessed. And if this, in any way, this video somehow reaches the OG original creators of the Dragon Age series, I thank you for what you gave and did and created. It is beautiful and I love it. And again, in this video, as I kept saying throughout multiple times, I tried to maintain positivity, especially towards the Veilguard segment. Because ultimately, for the things that it did wrong, the highs of this series far outweigh the lows. And seeing as how there most likely will not be more Dragon Age games, it's important to remember everything that it gave us and be grateful. Because we almost could have not had any of it. So again, thank you to the people who watched this. Thank you to the people who created this series that I love and adore. And just I don't know, just have a good life, I guess. I hope everybody chase your dreams, do what you want to do, fall in love, make friends, and you know, it hurts to let go of something, but sometimes you need to let go and move on, and it's time to make our own stories.